So I was reading in the news today and I saw an article that said, "How do you feel about Star Wars The Last Jedi 7 years after its release?" Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Oh, well, actually, a flu, but 7 years after its release. And I had to sit there and I had to think about it. And I think the more that I have thought about this movie and percolated it around in my mind, I still think it is the worst Star Wars movie that they ever released out of all of them. The TV series, the movies, anything. I just think it was horribly done. The whole sequel series was given to J.J. Abrams, and then it was given to Ryan Johnson, and it was given back to J.J. Abrams to try to save it. And it just, the whole thing was bad. And I want to read this article with you real quick, and then I want to give you 5 things that I think made it bad or what they could have done to make it better. So let me show you. And it says, "How do you feel about Star Wars The Last Jedi 7 years after its release?" It's been nearly 7 years since Star Wars The Last Jedi first hit theaters. And while it remains one of the most divisive among fans of the franchise, I still consider it to be my favorite of all 11 films. Much like The Empire Strikes Back before it, Ryan Johnson smartly did away with many of the expectations we had from the mysteries set up in The Force Awakens, thus making it most unpredictable in the series since the 1980 classic. Pair that with true sense of wonder Johnson clearly had for the Star Wars universe and some ideas for how to move the story beyond just the Skywalker saga, I do hope The Last Jedi's detractors can someday come around to seeing its merits in lieu of their expectations not being met. And there's Luke. By the time we get to The Last Jedi, Han Solo has already been killed. They wanted Rey as the main character, which is what they did. There was so much conflicting backstory. You didn't know who she was. And because they wanted to have her as the main character and surrounded by new people, they started to kill off everybody from the main trilogy, which to me was so sacrilegious and horrid. And here's 5 things that either made the movie bad or they could have done to improve it. Number 1, Luke had given up hope in himself and the universe. That's why he cut himself off from the Force. He ended up being very selfish and a cranky old man. He basically turned his back on his family and friends so he could wallow in his own self-pity. And I find that so hard to believe. That wasn't the Luke we knew. Number 2, the Luke we knew from the original series had always seen the redemption qualities in everyone. His father was the most feared and evil person in the galaxy at the time, and Luke still knew that there was good in him. He could feel it, and he actually helped his father redeem himself. Number 3, Mark Hamill actually said that Luke Skywalker that they created for The Last Jedi was not the Luke Skywalker that was from the original trilogies. He was more like his cousin Jake Skywalker, and he even argued with Ryan Johnson about the storyline and the direction that Luke took in the movie. Mark disagreed with him, but he couldn't get him to change anything. So Mark just had to go along with it and play the part. I think it really hurt Mark that they made Luke Skywalker out to be this kind of person. And it did me too. Number 4, in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker used force projection to create a lifelike image of himself that he transmitted across the Force to the battlefield of Crate. This technique was also known as simulfulturus or doppelganger. There was no reason for him to use this skill and then have it basically kill him. To me personally, they plunged a dagger in my heart and then twisted it while they smiled in my face. You don't ever see anybody using any Jedi skills or any Sith skills that would kill them. So I don't know why they decided to use this as something to kill him if it was an easy way out for them to get rid of Mark Hamill as the person of Luke Skywalker. So I guess those are all the negatives that I have for the movie. And here's something that they could have done to make the movie better.
Number 5.
If they could have mixed legends into the movie, it would have made for a better story. Luke could have created his new Jedi Order, basically making the Jedi a gray Jedi Order, allowing for attachments, marriage, children, etc. And then Luke could have been married to Mara Jade, and they could have turned the war with the First Order around. They could have found Rey and brought her into the movie, or she could have joined the Jedi Order. They should have made Luke more of a main character in this trilogy. That way, he would have been a different Luke Skywalker than this guy who was horrid. He was terrible. He'd given up on himself. He'd given up on everybody. And if they would have had the Legends Luke, he would have had this great Jedi Order. Ben Solo could have defected. Either way, then Rey could have been found. Or I know they wanted to make Rey the main character and surround her with all these new people, but I think they shot themselves in the foot by killing off every single person from the original trilogy that was in the main group, except for Chewbacca. They killed off Han Solo, then they killed off Luke, and then Princess Leia died like her mom with a broken heart for Ben Solo. It was like a repeat of the original trilogies and the prequels. The first movie was basically Star Wars, just revamped. I remember watching the Force Awakens in the movies, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, they're starting off in a desert, and here's this young girl who has these Force abilities. It was very, very disappointing for me, this whole trilogy. And I just wish they would retcon it. I don't want to sound negative. I'm just so disappointed and heartbroken. Even 7 years from now, it was 7 years ago, and I'm just still heartbroken over it. And I think that Mark Hamill had it right. He goes, you shouldn't watch this movie if you're trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle or that magic from the original trilogies, because this wasn't it. But if you like the movies, I'm so happy for you, and I don't hate you. I think it's great that you like the movies. And it's funny to me, the people in my time period that were born loved the original trilogy. People that I talked to that were a little bit younger, that were born, around the 90s, they love the prequels. They love, the Revenge of the Sith. And a lot of people, I think, that have not seen the original series and the prequels, when they started off with these movies and all they saw was The Force Awakens and, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, those are the ones that resonate most with them. So it's not the same for everybody, but for me personally, I don't, after 7 years, I still dislike it as much or even more than I did when I first saw it. But if you like the Sith, I have 5 of the most devastating Sith abilities that you've never heard of. Check them out. You'll like it. May the Force be with you always. And thank you for sticking with me while I had this cold.